think about me. I can't even fathom it. And so today we're going to talk about that relationship from a different point of view. And the relationship that I should have with God is that of wonder and awe. The relationship that I should have with God is wonder and awe. In Romans chapter number 12, we have the very famous, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Very, very popular verses. But what we often miss is I beseech you therefore. That therefore is therefore. It's what is he trying to beseech us to do? Why is he beseeching us? And in Romans chapter 11, verse number 33, it says, "Oh, the depth of the riches, both of the wisdom and knowledge of God." Now, I did not read it with the inflection to which the author or the penman wrote it, because he goes, "Oh, the depth of riches, both of the wisdom and knowledge of God." There's an exclamation point. How deep and how wonderful it is. But it says, "How unsearchable are his judgments, and his ways past finding out." His judgment is unsearchable. You can't look at it. You can't try to figure it out. It's unable to be done. And his way is past finding out. You couldn't even do it if you tried. That's how good our God is. And that's how different God is from you and I. So when you go, I don't understand what God is doing, you're finally starting to get to the very beginning where you can have a relationship with him. If you can understand what God is doing, then guess what? God's not doing it. Read your Bible. I didn't say it. Okay? So if you can understand it, and you can explain it away, it ain't God. And when we look at this and it goes forward, it says, "For who hath known the mind of the Lord? Or who hath been his counselor? Or who hath first given to him, and it shall be recompensed unto him again?" Who's the person who God borrowed from? Really, who is it that God owes? That's what it's asking. Who is it that God owes? Is there anybody that God says, I'm a debtor to? I can say I'm a debtor to people. There are people that I owe things to. But God owes no one. He didn't borrow. He didn't sample. Everything is his. And it is great because of it. For of him, and through him, and to him are all things. Of, through, to. There's nothing that's not God's. Nothing that he didn't do. Nothing that he hasn't thought of. That all of it is God's. To whom be glory forever. Amen. And because of those things, Paul is writing to the Roman church saying, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God. And now you can see why there's mercy. Now you can see why you have to have the mercy of God, because there is absolutely nothing that I can do that will help God. The privilege of serving God should be enough for most of us to get out of bed every morning, but it doesn't all the time. And that's why he's saying, present your body a living sacrifice. When you start to get a real visualization of God, and you can really, truly see who he is, and find out who God is, it will cause you to have to change when you really see it. And the relationship between you and God should be of awe and wonder. Has anybody ever seen the Northern Lights? If you look at the Northern Lights, does it make you go, it's okay? No. One of the best things that I ever got to see living in Wyoming was to actually see the Milky Way galaxy. When you're in Wyoming and it's pitch black because there's like 10 people who live in the state, and you're there and you're out in the middle of nowhere, You look up in the sky, and there it is. So I'm out elk hunting. And yes, I wanted to kill an elk because they taste delicious, all right? And I'm bow hunting. So just to put it into the time of the year it is, it's roughly about this time in Wyoming. So cold, snow. And I'm out hunting, and it's dark because it's Wyoming, and it's always dark when it's dark. And I look up, and it's just gorgeous. The oranges, the blues, the greens in the sky, that are the stars. And then I hear the bugle of an elk. And I didn't want to turn my eyes away from the sky. Now I did, but I didn't want to. And that's the day that the bowstring broke on my arm. And you can ask my wife about the 9 months of a bruise on it when my bowstring broke on my arm. Probably punishment for looking away, but not really. But that's the way it felt for a while. But to look and see the stars and the majesty of God and the awe in which it made me feel, that's the way I should have a relationship with God. And you're like, but for real? Yeah. So let's turn to Job. Let's all turn to Job. Now, one of my favorite things about Job is that the story of Job is kind of crazy, right? Like, let's think about the story of Job. So God is talking with all of the angels. They're all talking together. And he brings everybody together. And as he's talking to them, Satan comes up. And he's been walking to and fro throughout the earth, and he's trying to prove something. And as he's trying to prove something, God says, "Have you considered my servant Job?" I want to be honest with you. I don't know if I want to be the considered servant of God. Like in this situation, looking at this, what I know in, looking back at this, Satan says, I'm looking for something I'm trying to do, and God says, have you considered my servant Job? And Satan says, well, I have, but you've got your hand of protection about him. I can't touch him. If you remove your protection, he'll fall. God said, all right, I'm going to take my hand of protection away from everything but him. So what does Satan do? Satan goes out, and he takes all of his livestock, all of his wealth, all of his riches, gone. But then he takes his children. In one day, he loses everything, right? The only thing left with is his wife. And I think Satan left her around because of a little bit later, because he knew how she would act. And if we know the story, she tells Job, curse God and die. That's why I think she didn't die that day. Just throwing it out there. It's Kevin's philosophy on it. But what does the Bible say he does? And Job arose and rent his mantle, so he's sad, shaved his head, and this is verse number 20 of chapter 1, and fell down upon the ground and worshipped. He's lost his wealth. He's lost his kids. He tears his clothes, shaves his head, and falls down and worships. How many of us would do that? And he says, naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And in all this, Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. After losing valuable possessions and losing children, he worshiped God and did not sin or charge God foolishly. Wow. Pretty good guy. Pretty outstanding. I don't know exactly how long later it is. I would kind of hope there's a space. I don't think it's like the very next day. Could be wrong. Get to heaven. Somebody can put a clock on it. We can ask Job how long it was. But we know that Job has another one of these encounters because Satan goes back and talks to God again and says, well, yeah, you let me take away his stuff, but you didn't let me touch his body. God gives him permission. God gives him permission to touch him. Takes away his health. From the top of his head to the bottom of his feet, he's covered in boils. Has anybody ever had boils? Anybody had one on the top of your head? Anyone had it on the bottom of your feet? Now imagine everywhere in between. I've had one boil in my entire life, and I was willing to die at that point. I'm done. This guy had it from the top of his head to the bottom of his feet. So where does he go? He goes to where they burn their trash, and he takes broken pieces of pot and cuts them open and rubs the ash from the trash. Folks, this isn't just like paper. This is also like manure. Like they're burning this stuff, all of it. And he's rubbing it in him to get some relief. This is all the stuff that's going on with Job. God's servant. The one God says, go ahead, take him. Does God ever tell Job that he's doing this? Do you ever see where it says God said to Job, and God spoke to Job, and I'm going to put you up for some challenges? God knew Job well enough. God knew Job well enough that he didn't have to do that. How many other times do we see when God puts somebody through a trial, he says, I'm going to temper you before I put you through that trial? Study that. That's a good Bible study. How many times God tells other people, hey, I'm going to put you through some stuff beforehand? We get that warning, folks. You realize we get that warning? Like God knew we were so soft that he had to warn us that we're going to get tried? Job, some of the other people didn't get it. Now Job goes, and we don't know exactly how long this goes on, but we know there's 7 days where Job sits silently with friends, where 3 guys sit with him for a week, silently in the trash heap. Not a word is spoken. Do you think they got up and left? I don't think they left. I think for 7 days, Job and 3 guys that would have been Job's friends sat in the dump. I don't think they went home. I don't think Job was going home. And then we don't know how long the period of time goes, but we do know that there's a very long conversation between Job and his 3 friends. And then a 4th guy, a knucklehead, shows up at the end and just tries to say he knows things. And he doesn't. And I love the way God beats that guy down too, by the way. So if you ever want to see a really good study, just understand that if you aren't supposed to be there, you probably shouldn't be there. And if you're not supposed to speak, you probably shouldn't, because God bashes that guy pretty hard. But when we get to the end of the book of Job, and we're at the very end of Job, and we go to chapter number 38, everybody's had an opportunity to speak. Job's spoken a lot. All the friends have spoken. The knucklehead has spoken. But then an amazing thing happens. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind. God spoke to Job out of the whirlwind. What does that mean? I have no idea. But what is a whirlwind? It's a lot of wind that's whirling around. Where are they at? In a dump. So imagine a tornado, we don't know how big, has fallen in the dump and is talking. Your Bible said it. I did not. So I want you to think about it, because where they're at, the dump. Job has to be close enough to hear the whirlwind speaking, because God is addressing Job in particular. So, what do I picture? Because Kevin's imagination, everybody gets to do it. Imagine one of those campfire meetings. Everybody's sitting around a campfire where they're burning trash. Job's on one side, the friends are on the other side, and then all of a sudden, whirlwind falls down, poof, right in the middle. That's where it's at. This is my imagination. That is not the Bible. That is Kevin's imagination. So if you want to come along with me on this imagination ride, that's where it'll be. And then Job starts to hear God himself speak. And what he said, who is this that darkeneth counsel by words without knowledge? Could you imagine God starting the conversation with you as, who's the one who's saying things who has no idea what they're talking about? If you ever spend any time with Gavin, you probably will have to say those words. He will talk about a subject, he will tell you like he's an expert, and he has absolutely no idea because he's watched a YouTube video about some crazy person who has told something. That is Gavin. And so I just see God like, come on, seriously? You have no knowledge. You have no idea what you're talking about. Gird up now thy loins like a man, for I will demand of thee, and answer thou me. So a whirlwind falls. My loins are now ungirded anyways. Like, I'm going to run away. I am terrified. I'm a little sissy because I don't want to get caught up in the whirlwind. But now the whirlwind's talking to me, and the whirlwind's smart. But do you notice how they don't question if it's the voice of the Lord? There is no question on if it's the voice of the Lord. That means something about that voice, they just know. And that voice of God says, gird yourself up, because I'm going to ask you a question, and you're going to answer me. Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? We're done. All right? There was no one there when he laid the foundations of the earth. Not a one. God is it. There was no one else there. So where were you? I wasn't a twinkle and a twinkle and a twinkle. We don't know how far apart this is, but we do know that Job is probably a contemporary of Abraham. That's historically, we would think that Job was a contemporary of Abraham. So that's how far removed we are from creation. Where were you? I was nowhere. I was nowhere. Declare if thou hast understanding. Do you understand the foundation of the earth? Anybody here understand the foundation of the earth? Because as of today, we have found more things out than we ever thought we would about the molecules and the atoms that we currently are made up of. And every year we're finding out new things. Things that we thought were without doubt, like this is the smallest particle, we keep getting smaller. We to this day don't know. And if to this day we don't know, look how far away we are removed from Abraham and how far we are removed from Job. We still can't answer what the foundation is. How does it happen? I don't know. We still don't know. With all the scientific breakthrough, we can put people into space, we can launch things away out of the solar system, and we still can't answer the simple question of what's the foundation? If we can't be in awe of God at this moment and the wonder of God, then we're just not trying. Who hath laid a measure thereof? If thou knowest, or who hath stretched the line upon it? I want to see somebody take a measuring tape to space. Like, let's launch a space shuttle with the measuring tape from a point and go, let's see how far we go. Okay, let's think about that. The earth goes in a circle, and so it's just going to get wound up over and over and over. How long is that piece going to be? And who's going to drop a measuring tape? And how far is it really? But is it really that? Because let's get real theoretical here. We know that space isn't stagnant. We do know that it is moving. So as we're moving, something that was way over there may actually be over here now, and we just don't know how long it takes to get there. And it moves in other dimensions because we only move like this way, but the universe moves up and down as well. The looks on your guys' faces are like, huh? I studied this to understand it, to try to wrap my head around it. And I will tell you, after studying it and looking at it and trying to figure things out, I have less knowledge than I did before I started. Because what I have found out is God is just so much greater than I could ever imagine. And he's so wonderful that I can't even wrap my head around it. When the morning stars sang together, hold on. The stars sang? Has anybody ever heard the stars sing? Science has. Here's this cool thing. We launch these things up into space and they listen. And they have sound. What? We're just hearing about this? God's telling us they sang. There's theories about the earth and how it was before Noah and the flood, that it was wrapped in a layer, in that layer of ice, and as the sound waves and the light waves came through, it would shake the exosphere, and that what would happen was it would actually make it sound like it was singing. And it is proven that if you put sound near plants, certain sounds make certain plants grow better. And those certain sounds making certain plants probably are the same hermeneutics and all those fun words that I can't pronounce, I'm going to be made fun of later. But they're all the things that happen that allow those things to grow. And God told them about it back in Job. Folks, the sheer depth of stupidity to which we sit at and the pure knowledge in which God has is astounding. As you read through this entire rest of this book, and you just finish out the book of Job, he brings up some things. He brings up the ostrich, he brings up Leviathan, he brings up Behemoth. He brings up lots of different examples of all the things that he can do, that he has created, that are so far above and beyond what we could ever even imagine or try. And God says, what about you? What have you done? So I'm going to ask you this question. In the comparison to what God himself has done, what have you done? Have you ever considered the beauty of a lily? Have you taken time to pause and look? During COVID, I had this really fun thing where I would go take these walks around our housing where we live and neighborhood. There we go. Whew. Wow, who'd have thought the word neighborhood would have tripped me up? And there's these people, I kid you not, have the most beautiful roses. Like, there's a house, the rose bushes out front, just gorgeous all the time. Like, I don't know how they do it. I want to ask them, but I'm afraid they'll be like, it's a family secret. I'm not going to tell you. And so I don't go and ask. Also, it seems kind of weird. Hey, how do you make your roses so pretty? I walked up to it, and I just decided one day, because the smell hit me. Like, it just beautiful. And I walked up and I just looked at the rose bush. And I got really close to the rose and just looked at it for probably way too long of time. It's probably creepy. If they were looking outside or had a Ring doorbell, I was that guy who was just creepily standing outside. But I'll tell you what, this rose had 3 different colors on the petals. And as it came out, it just changed in a gradient way, and I'm just sitting there going, what in the world? And I looked all the way down, and I looked at every little aspect of it. And just this one rose caught my attention. And I could never have thought to have created something so beautiful, or something that smelled so sweet. And yet God did that for me. When we look out and we see the trees and how they work, we just consider how we breathe out carbon dioxide and trees breathe out oxygen. Man. When you stop and you look and you just absorb the beauty and the wonder of it all, how little I am compared to him and how wonderful he is. I am not worthy to be in his presence. The relationship is about understanding how great a God we serve, how amazing a God we serve, how wonderful he is to us. And here's my question. Have you taken time to consider what he is? Omnipotent, all-powerful. There is nothing that he cannot do. Omniscient, all-knowing. There's nothing he doesn't know. Omnipresent, he is everywhere. Man, I have a great God. And when I sit and think about that, my God is so good. I could not try to create a physical manifestation of him. I couldn't do it. I shouldn't do it. So don't lose the wonder of him. Don't lose the wonder of God. Don't lose the thought that he's done and is and forever will be so much greater than I am. So I want to give just this last illustration. We are promised a home in heaven. We are given a promise of home in heaven. If you are saved, it's yours. The beauty that's going to be there, the wonder, the things that you're going to see that we know, just the things we know are amazing. And it says the half has not been told. Streets of gold, gates of pearl. The foundations of the city are built on precious stones. The river, the tree, all those things we know about. We know that there is a throne that God sits on, that a rainbow encircles. We know those things. And it says the half has not been told. We don't even know half of what's prepared for us. But yet we can picture that in our head, streets of gold. I can picture streets of gold. I can picture gates of pearls. I can picture a river. I can picture a throne wrapped in a rainbow. I can imagine those things, but I don't even have half of the knowledge of what God has prepared for me. How great a God I serve. How great a God I serve. How wonderful, how awesome, how marvelous. And the relationship that we need to have with God is an understanding of, woe is me. I am undone. Because even as put together as I can be, in comparison to him, I have nothing. But he still loves me. And I don't understand it. And I never will. That's how good our God is.